What is up, guys? I know AD carries aren't that great in Season 7 right now. That's probably an understatement, but people are using that as an excuse for doing dumb as balls stuff all the time. So we're going to cover some of the most common mistakes or some tips you might not have thought about properly for AD carrying the lane phase. Before we start, thank you to Pro Guides for editing this video together for me. You can check out a bunch of their guides and the Genius feature where you can chat to a high level player all day, every day down in the description. And if you have any other tips, make sure you leave them down below. But let's go into my first one at the very start of the lane phase. The first wave of minions has to die before the second one arrives. So it's almost impossible to kill the first wave of casters once the second wave is already there. You'd have to walk forward to hit their back line, like through the second wave of the front minions. You get abused by the AD carry and the enemy support. This is one of the biggest mistakes people make in the first 2 minutes of a game. It's actually a big deal if you ever want to get level 2 first and make sure you guarantee that level 2 first, and you have to make sure the entire first wave is dead before the second arrives. I'm not saying that you have to push really hard, otherwise they're going to end up under their tower, but you just have to make sure the first one is dead. So if you want to use your level advantage at level 2 and level 6 specifically, you only want to move in when you need one minion to die to level you up. Otherwise it's too obvious, you just ping on your way and it makes it a bit easier as well. The third tip is warding the bush just before the last minion dies in the lane and the wave pushes into you as you're running back to your tower. This is one that I see loads of people actually mess up. As you're running backwards, you want that bush warded before they get into it and before they're close by it. Warding a bush with someone in it is actually always a pretty big risk. This little tip removes that entire risk completely, so you ward it earlier rather than later afterwards. So the next one is punishing the supports is actually not a bad thing. Focusing the support is not always bad. It's free damage, and this is mostly on tank supports actually. You play the cooldown game, you put them low health so they can't engage. I see so many people, like for example, run away from a Leona even after she misses her E. Or a Blitzcrank with his hook. Like, why are you running away from them? They can't do anything. You hit them so they're too low to jump in afterwards and fight you the next time round. Warlords versus Fervor is probably one of the most like contested topics I ever get. Even though I made a video about it, I guess it's slightly different now actually after the changes in Season 7, but we're going to go over when you take what and why. So Warlords is a sustain game basically. You take damage but then you heal it back afterwards. That is the entire point of the keystone in the lane phase. You play more aggressively actually with Warlords because you can take the damage. Fervor is about all in a fight, so it gives you more damage up front in an all in fight, but you don't want short trades, you want extended trades or proper fights. You have to be more careful. If you mess up a trade or you go even versus a Warlords keystone, then they were actually going to heal back afterwards and they're going to get control of the lane. Even if you won the trade, it doesn't matter, they're going to get control back. Very similar to that actually is Ignite versus Exhaust on a support. How do you play differently when the enemy support has an Exhaust or an Ignite? All the Ignite really means is it's better at killing you obviously, but you have to heal earlier. It's very similar to Varus actually. The Ignite debuff means your heal will heal for less, and also if you're on Varus's E, his hail of arrows, that little circle, it's actually going to reduce your heal as well. So be careful not to use it while you're in it. You're going to have to get used to preemptively healing basically. You heal earlier than normal or you wait out the Ignite, which is harder here unless they ignite as they engage. That's pretty much how you counter Ignite. It's actually quite difficult to heal preemptively because you feel like you're wasting it, but trust me, this is the way you actually win if you're going to use it later on in a fight anyway. For Exhaust, the ideal way you play this is actually you bait it out, so you get it used on top of you, run away, and then you go back in after it's already used. This is obviously another side to it as well, is you have to calculate your damage through Exhaust. Like, they're going to use it on you, right? Unless they really screw up and do it on the support, which they're probably not going to. You have to make sure that even if they exhaust you, you're still going to have the damage if you can't run away. The next thing is you always want to watch how bot lane arrives into the game. Know where the jungler started, and you should also tell your team, by the way, if they leash bot lane or top lane to make sure that you know kind of where the enemy jungler is going to be. You should also have a really good idea if you're going to get level 3 ganked most likely, or if top lane is instead. Like if he starts bot side, then he's going to be going red, blue, and then top lane, for example. If he started top side, he'd go blue, red, and then probably bot lane. This is probably actually the biggest thing you should take away from this video, which sounds really strange, but do not stand between the wall and the bottom side of the tower. I call this skill shot alley. Basically, even I cannot miss a skill shot here because you cannot dodge side to side, so it's really easy to hit them. You always want to stand above. You might still eat the skill shots, who knows if you can't dodge or if they're just really accurate or something, but at least you have a chance to. In that little gap between the tower and the bottom side wall, you're always going to get hit. So let's talk about warding very quickly in the bot lane. So if you're pushing, you need the bush closest to their tower warded. So if you're on the right hand side of the map, then you need the tri-bush warded because you're pushing towards the left. If you're bottom side, if you're on the left, then you ward the river because you're pushing towards the right. If you are being pushed in yourself, then you want to ward the closest towards your tower to make sure you don't get dove. So in the reverse, if you're on the left hand side, you ward tri-bush near your tower. If you're on the right hand side, you ward the river bush. Moving on to recalls, this is one of the biggest things and probably one of the most confusing things actually for AD carries. Do you push or do you leave the wave where it is? So if the enemy recalls first, you always want to push it into their tower to make them miss CS, as long as you're not going to get ganked and as long as you're able to actually get it into tower. You also want to watch your minions minions on the mini-map to see where their next wave will actually arrive. See if it's going to stop yours or if you need to push another one or not. Even though it sounds kind of dumb, the mini-map is mirrored, of course. So if your minions are at your second tower, then their minions are at their second tower, and you know roughly when they're going to arrive and if they're going to crash into yours or if yours is going to hit the tower. If their support as well is holding outside of the tower, trying to like at least keep it outside so the enemy AD gets all that farm, it is worth running at them and slapping them for it, even if it gets you recalling later. So if you have to recall first, this is probably one of the questions I get most. You want to try and push with your support first. If you can't do that, then you wait for a cannon wave. So yes, you missed a cannon. I know it sounds really weird because cannon's worth more gold, but it actually absorbs more damage from your tower. So in theory, more of their caster minions are going to be alive when you get back to the tower, and overall, you're actually going to get more experience doing it that way. Next one is you always want to try and stand behind or to the side of your support. That way, they're most likely going to absorb some damage at least, if not all of the damage, instead of you. As dumb as this actually sounds, and it's not always possible either, sometimes you have to go in first, depends on matchups and stuff, but you're basically adding their health total on top of yours by baiting them. By them absorbing damage for you, you're kind of adding it onto your own. So next one is you can tell by behavior if you're being ganked 90% of the time. They suddenly run towards you out of nowhere, then just run away. You're better safe than sorry, and 9 times out of 10, you are actually getting ganked. Part of this is actually knowing who the enemy jungler is. So Evelyn and Twitch, for example, you're going to need to deep ward in their jungle so you can see them doing camps, or you just play very safe and assume they're always there. Nocturne, Rengar, Shaco, Zac, and people like that, you basically assume that your wards are not going to see them. So it's kind of the same deal actually. Is why it's important to pay attention to buff timers as well, because like if the mid laner just got blue, for example, then you know the enemy jungler is there as well. Let's go over some very common matchup stuff that people forget or misplay all the time. So the first one is Ezreal. He's very popular. You want to stand behind minions and fight in minions. If he can't hit his Q on you because it's blocked by an enemy minion, then he basically has no damage. And this is the easiest way in the world to beat him. Caitlyn's another one actually where you want to stand behind minions to block part of her Q damage. It does more damage to the first target it hits, so standing behind minions is going to reduce her damage. Leona, once she's used her combo, she's actually useless, honestly. If the enemy AD can't reach you and Leona is running backwards, focus her, beat her down for it. This is 100% the easiest way to crap on a Leona player, but people just like run away or they let her run away. Dealing with Soraka is very difficult, right? But you actually want to trade with Soraka and dodge her Q more than anything. That is actually how you beat her. Early, you can actually burn through the enemy AD because the W has a very high cooldown. So all in all, if you want to kill someone, then you go for the AD. If you're trading, then you go for Soraka. Until level 6, then you have to try and catch her because she has her ultimate. For Blitzcrank or very similar champions like Leona, I guess, kind of, and Thresh with his hook, you dodge that hook and then you can go more aggressive. They can only really flash to fist you afterwards, so that's the only way they can get you. When you're playing with a Soraka, Nami, and a Sona, it's very similar to with Warlords, so you basically trade aggressively and you take damage. You can go for an even trade, you deal 100, you take 100 damage, and then you let your support heal you back up afterwards. That is actually how you win healing lanes, and a lot of people don't use this properly. With a Janna, for example, you use that shield and then you exit when it's gone. Really, when we're looking at champion specific stuff, you only need to figure out what champion is strong at and how they want to fight to know how you'd beat them and how you'd win with them. So if we look at Ezreal and Sona lane, for example, versus the Caitlyn and Karma. Ezreal, you want to hit your Q over and over. You want to hit your ultimate without hitting minions first, where his damage actually comes from. Sona, you want to Q poke, you slowly heal back up, and you have your ultimate to stun. Now, on the other side of things with Caitlyn, she wants to hit her Q on you, preferably not through minions so it does more damage, auto with a high range, or let you step on a trap and do even more damage. Karma wants to poke with her Q. She's going to shield Caitlyn to run forward and trade, and she's also going to try and tether stun you. So from that, as Ezreal, what we want to do is we want to try and CS with our autos and poke with our Qs so we can get them lower. That's just knowing what we're good at. We also want to try and poke with Sona, take damage, and then let her heal it back up. That's what she's good at. We want to stand behind minions so we don't take the full Q damage. We don't let a constant auto attack us either, which is avoiding what Caitlyn's good at. And we want to stand further behind minions actually so we don't get the splash Q damage from Karma. We save our E as well for when she uses the tether on us, and that is just avoiding what Karma is good at. That kind of way of thinking works for every single lane in the game, but this is how you work it out. This is how you win a lane. So now we're going to go over some more advanced things. This is probably Plat Plus, maybe Plat and Diamond. Like, you can use this in lower elos as well, but this is much more high level of thinking. So if someone is taking repeated bad trades over and over very quickly after each other as well, like free auto attacks or something like that, then most likely they're setting up for a gank. A lot of people don't realize this, but it's really obvious. You always want to try and stand bottom side of the lane because you have the most chance to react to ganks, and you want to look at your lanes as well to work out if you'll get ganked. If top and mid are being pushed, then you're the only lane that their jungler can gank, so you probably don't want to push as well because you're making yourself a very obvious target. The second thing is using map pressure. So the ideal lane situation is actually pushing. It creates pressure and it makes them miss CS under tower. It lets you free trade as well. The other reason we do this is because we actually want to get ganked. I know it sounds really weird, but we actually want the enemy jungler to come bot lane because it means your mid and top aren't getting ganked. It relieves all pressure on the map. Obviously you don't die to it, but at least your mid and top can just free farm in their lanes. You're the best lane to deal with ganks, honestly. We have a Sightstone and we have the most ward coverage. We have the highest chance to see them in advance and not die to it and just run away. We also have the highest chance to receive some help from the ganks. We get a roam from mid lane or a TP from top or a jungler counter ganking. You can't help top if he gets ganked, but he can help you. It sounds very weird, but it's actually not a bad thing to have a lot of pressure bot lane. This is not always going to work though. If your jungler is top lane, you have no support and you're not going to be able to get away with it. Most laners will call for jungle ganks if they're under their tower as well. Most junglers will see a pushing lane as easy kills, so you have to be aware you are probably going to get ganked. If your team focuses topside, then you can't really do too much. You have to kind of concede some lane pressure and just farm it up, and if their jungler is topside though as well, then you should actually look to punish. Early roams, and I'm talking like level 6 plus by the way, are better than you actually probably think. You can push, and if their mid lane has no wave clear, then you can actually roam and get some mid tower damage. Kind of moving on from this, when you get a lead bot lane, you should actually try and get your jungler to invade their bot side jungle and go with them. At least the support to start with, but the AD is even better. Counter jungling as a unit of jungle, support, and AD is very hard to contest and play around when you're stronger, and this is actually how you really start to squeeze the life out of the game. Also, before an all-in fight bot lane, you should have an idea when the enemy jungler is, plus whether the enemy has TP and whether your top laner does to counter it. Chances are much higher at high reload that TP will be used bot lane and mid will also start to roam. You can also normally judge who roams first from mid by the position of the lane. So if your mid laner is pushing, they are likely to roam first. If your mid laner is being pushed in, they can't run past minions though. The enemy is probably going to arrive first. Obviously this depends on champions, but that in general is how it works. So for example, if you get ganked by the enemy mid laner and they've been pushing the entire game, then you probably should have expected it. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video and learned something. Let me know what you think. Thank you for watching, and remember to check out Pro Guides. But for now, let's go to the robots.